Imagine, if you will, you are on a wide open plain with your extended family. You are hunting. It could be for buffalo or deer or bear or moose, or you might be fishing. All you know is that if you do not find and catch your prey, that your family will go hungry. You have only simple weapons and your own wisdom and experience to guide you. There are no vehicles, no fancy weapons, no electricity, no lights, no buildings to hide within if the weather turns rough. There is only you, your family, the animals, the land, a wide open sky, and the brilliance and warmth of a bright burning sun. But then as you continue to hunt, you begin to notice some very strange and frightening things happening around you. The bright greens of the trees, the browns of the hills, the deep blue of the sky, and the colors around begin to dull into varied shades of gray. The shadows on the trees start to move, not imperceptibly slow like they do throughout the day, but they seem to be almost creeping on the ground. New and strange whiskery shadows begin to appear on the ground as well. Then there's a glow on the horizon, like there is at the end of the day, but the glow is not just in one spot. It surrounds you in all directions, and it is the middle of the day. Soon after, the skies grow dark as night. The sun disappears, and there is no moonlight. Everything is suddenly draped in a gloomy cover of an early dusk. Something has taken the sun away. You think to yourself, this must be the end of the world. It is not the end of the world, of course. It is a total solar eclipse. But such events have always been very frightening and disturbing for people who did not understand what was actually happening in the sky above them. In ancient Mesopotamia, solar eclipses were taken as a sign that the death of their king was imminent. In 585 BC, the Greek city-states of Lydia and Medea suddenly ended their 6-year war and negotiated with each other for peace when they found themselves in the midst of a solar eclipse. In 1133, the death of England's King Henry I coincided with a solar eclipse. The English were so frightened about the meaning of that event that the whole country was thrown into a civil war. But in case you thought that such superstitious fears of the eclipse are relegated only to the past, consider the multiple postings of people who claimed that the total solar eclipse of 2017 was the cause of larger than normal hurricanes, unusual solar flares, and multiple earthquakes. There was, of course, no scientific evidence given for any of these claims. Even now, in 2024, according to one website, the solar eclipse will bring on the beginning of World War III and the destruction of New York City Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and Boston. So I am thankful that I will be here in Vermont for the event rather than back in Boston. Much of this fear, of course, is due to the fact that people did not understand what was happening and why. Being the rational creatures that we are, we tend to invent answers when we don't have any answers. For many cultures, the eclipse looked to them as if the sun was being devoured by another creature, such as a frog, a wolf, or an enormous dragon. In order to prevent that from happening, people shouted and made loud noises to try and warn the sun. Some shot flaming arrows into the sky to try and reignite the burning star. Others thought that the sun and moon were fighting, or that they were lovers and just wanted a few moments of privacy. For other cultures, the disappearance of the sun was a clear sign that their god or gods were angry and wanted to send a dire warning. The eclipse has been the focus for a great many sacrifices, repentances, revivals, prayers, and rituals, and for better or worse, the incantations and supplications have always worked because the light of the sun always returned. In order to prepare for this upcoming celestial event, we need to understand exactly what happens in the sky during an eclipse. First of all, without using an inordinate amount of scientific verbiage and complicated language, let me explain in the simplest terms possible what exactly happens to the sun during a total solar eclipse. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No disappearance, no devouring, no pitched battles, no mysterious acts of disappearance. Nothing. But what happens to the moon during a total solar eclipse as it dares to cross the path of the mighty sun? Well, nothing. Again, nothing. No munching, no crunching, and no punching. Nothing. The only thing that does happen is that the shadow of the moon, caused by the light of our sun, crosses over certain portions of the Earth's surface as the moon passes overhead. The only reason we experience this event is that our own planetary hitchhiker, the moon, is close enough and large enough to bear upon us its own shadow, or umbra, as the scientists call it, in the same way that an umbrella is able to block out the light of the sun. Even though the sun is 400 times the size of the moon, the fact that it is 400 times as far from Earth means that even a small planetary satellite can create a fairly large shadow on its host. But I do want to emphasize, nothing has ever been destroyed by a shadow. There is one thing, however, that does experience significant changes during a solar eclipse, and that one thing is, well, us. Beings on Earth depend on the cycles of the moon and the sun to regulate our own rhythms. We like our patterns, our habits, our routines. That is the magic of Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and Doctor Who. A sudden disruption of those cycles can create fear and panic, and a total solar eclipse can feel frightening. It has been noted that people actually do experience changes in pulse rate, heart rate, perspiration, and breathing during an eclipse, and there are the very real dangers of eye damage caused from looking up at the event with naked eyes, so please get proper glasses. Another recorded effect of past eclipses is scores of terrible car crashes that happen on the road. Please stay off the roads. I remember when my daughter and I used to watch a show together where a professional magician in a mask performed a difficult magic trick and then revealed how the trick was done. We loved that show, but I couldn't help thinking that pulling the curtain away from The Conjuring would take away from the excitement and the thrill of watching magic shows, in the same way that I have just debunked the folklore of eclipses here. I was wrong about the magic show because knowing how the trick was done just made us appreciate the artistry of the magician even more. There may not have been any magic, but there was plenty of mastery and majesty. The same can be said for grand celestial events such as a total solar eclipse. There may not be any magic involved, but there will still be a lot of beauty, grandeur, and splendor. We will be reminded, if only for a brief time, of the incredible wonders beyond our own planet. Through a sudden alteration of the routine patterns of our day, we will be awakened to the significance of the sun in our lives and to the lives of every being on earth. We will be captured by the absence of its brilliance while caught up in a mix of bewilderment, dread, and disorientation, perhaps. And finally, we will be swept into a state of awe and wonder. The feeling of being peripheral in the midst of a mighty and majestic and unbelievably enormous, constantly evolving universe can be disconcerting at best, but it can also be the source of a feeling of deep reverence. This sense of wonder, fascination, and admiration of something much bigger than ourselves is the source and seed of every religious tradition, both old and new. We see these amazing things, and then we ask, why or how? And our answers to those questions become our systems of belief. I believe, however, there is yet another lesson we may learn from the solar eclipse. During the impending darkness, we may experience unexpected losses of light, of heat, of time, of routine, and maybe even of identity. It is said that sometimes we do not appreciate things until they are gone. As the light of the sun is swept away by the silent shadow of the moon, let it remind us that our lives here are transitory and that all things will change, sometimes as anticipated, but sometimes in shockingly unexpected ways. Let it remind us that at any time in our lives, the things we have come to depend upon can be swept away in the breadth of a whisper or the space of a tragedy. Let us surrender to the moment and to the experience, as it may teach us about gratitude and reciprocity and compassion for others. Let it remind us to emit our own light as bright as we can, when we can, but to also accept the darker moments and help others find their time to shine. Finally, let it remind us of the futility of our own actions. We are here for but a short time on this planet, and yet we spend that time fighting, squabbling, and arguing with each other while our brief lights are ignited and then snuffed out. The sun and the moon do not fight. They do not possess. They do not seek to control. They exist in their own realms simply, fully, and majestically, in peace and fulfillment. I believe we can learn those lessons for ourselves as we watch those heavenly bodies dance in the sky together. In the name of that which you hold most sacred in your heart, may it be so.